Hey guys, it's Dave again from GuitarBreakdown.com, and today we're going to have a discussion of chord stuff. If you just fell asleep when you heard the word chords, please wake up, because this is not a boring chord lesson. This is a concept I learned a long time ago, actually, and when I first learned it, it was, first of all, it's a simple concept, but when I learned it, it opened up my world to seeing the guitar fretboard a different way. It opened up like how I could play songs in different ways using different chords and stuff. And it's not about learning a whole bunch of chord voicings. It's a concept, and when you apply the concept, you just come up with these chords. So it's based off of a guy named Dmaj was involved in a book back in, I think it was in the 80s. It was a book called 10. And it was basically 10 artists. It was written for GIT, Musicians Institute, and most of the guys there were teachers at the school at the time. Larry Carlton, I think, was involved. Robin Ford was involved. Ron Eshte or Eshet, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. I apologize. I think Steve Travato and Don Mock and Howard Roberts, the founder of the school. But anyway, they all wrote a section. So there were 10 different sections. And each one did a specialty kind of thing. So Larry Carlton did a solo kind of thing. I think Robin Ford did like a triad-y kind of solo thing, using triads and solos. And Don Mock did this thing. He wrote a little ballad, and it was a study on triads over bass notes. So it was just a root third and a fifth. They were major triads over a bass note. Now you could do augmented triads, diminished triads, minor triads, all that kind of stuff. But this is just based off of major triads. And I'm telling you, once you learn this concept and see what's going on, it's a bunch of just analyzing some things, and once you incorporate this in your playing, you're going to see your playing improve drastically. Not just chords, but for your solos too. So anyway, if you're not familiar with Don Mock, he's an amazing guitar player. Check out his website. I think it's donmock.com. I can't remember, but I will put a link in the description below. And I think, I remember seeing on his blog that he also said he had copies of this book available if you just emailed him. I'm sure he'd ask for a donation or some charge or something, but I haven't been able to find this book for years, and I've been looking because I only have some of the manuscript to the book. I lost my copy of it a long time ago, so if anybody knows where to get a copy of this, let me know also, because I'd love to get a copy of it. Anyway, so I hope you really enjoy this lesson, and we will get into it. And yeah, I hope you like it. Thanks. All right, guys, before we break down the song that I played at the very beginning, which was called Ballad of Triangles by Don Mock, we're going to discuss the concept that's going on here just a little bit so that you kind of get a grasp of what's going on. It's really simple, but it's a way of thinking that you may not be used to. And first, to start out, the song that was played at the beginning, again, was a study that was written for a book by Don Mock. So I don't think it was this great grand musical statement that was trying to be made. It was just a study of triads over bass notes. It's kind of like a classical study. There are a lot of classical studies out there that teach you certain things, and they're musical, but they're not the most amazing arrangement song kind of things. So if it wasn't the most pleasing to your ear, like, oh my God, that's an amazing song, it wasn't intended to be. It was intended to be a study, but have some musicality to it. So anyway, that being said, I still think it's cool. I think it sounds great, and I just think it's a really cool thing. So, but the concept that he's using here is what we're going to start out discussing. It is basically using, again, triads, major triads. You could do this with diminished and minor and all that kind of stuff, but this is just major triads over different bass notes. So if you look up here, it's basically, it'll show you a scale, and the way you come up with this may be review for a lot of people out there, the way you come up with a major chord is you take the root and the third and fifth of a scale. And for this instance, we'll use A major, okay? Now, most people know that this chord, okay? But if you just take the root, third, and fifth that are on the D, G, and B string, okay? So you have your A note on the 7th fret of the D string. You have your 6th fret. You have the C sharp on the G string, 6th fret. And then on the 5th fret of the B string, you have an E note. And that's the 5th of the scale, which is the root, third, and fifth, which makes up a chord. Now, if you put that over a root note of A, it's just an A major chord. Typical A major that everybody knows. But if you analyze that over a different bass note, like say B, okay? It's the same 3 notes that make up the A major chord, but it has a different bass note. Okay? And you can do that with any bass note. You could do it with a D. Okay? It still has the same 3 notes, A, C sharp, and E, but they have different bass notes. And you can get some out there sounds and some dissonance too. But anyway, the way to start looking at this and analyzing this is basically analyzing from the bass note being the root. So over an A, you have an A, a C sharp, and an E, which is the root, third, and fifth of A. Okay? And it's, again, these are written as, you can write them as chords, like A major 13 or major 11th with a flat 9 or whatever, or you could write them as slash chords. And that's the way, like if you look up here, an A over an A is basically an A major chord, okay? An A over a B is basically an A major triad with a B in the bass. Now an A over a D, again, is an A major triad with a D in the bass. So that's how that looks up there. The slash, the first thing you see is the triad, and the second thing is what's in the bass, okay? So let's analyze this just a few different ways. And we're not going to get crazy heavy into this because we're going to really do a huge lesson on this whole concept and how to use it in soloing and everything. But again, if you analyze this A major triad over an A, you have the root, third, and fifth of A. If you analyze it over B, that first note is the flat 7 of B, okay? Then the second note is a 9, okay? It's your major 9, or your 9, not major 9, but it's your 9th of B. And then the E is your 4th or the 11th of B. So now you have, again, you have a flat 7, you have a 9, and you have an 11. So this is basically a minor 11 chord. Okay? That's one way of looking at it. Now, if you do this over, say, we'll do it over, say, a B flat note, okay? You have your A major triad still, the same 3 notes, but we're playing a B flat note in the bass. So this is going to be some kind of B flat chord, major, minor, something, okay? The first note, the A note, is your major 7 of B flat, okay? Very dissonant. That's the root, that's the major 7. So the first note is a major 7. The second note is a minor third of B flat. Okay? So now that wouldn't really be a C sharp, it would be more a D flat note. Again, you can name things different ways. For example, you have an A note here, right? And then you have a B note on the 7th fret. Well, the note in between can either be A sharp or B flat. And again, I'm sure this is basic for a lot of people, but I'm just trying to touch on this. You can also name things a bunch of different ways, like say here's a B note, a C note, and a D note. Well, the note between C and D is either a C sharp or a D flat, but it can also be called B double sharp, because you have your B note here. C is really B sharp, and C sharp can also be B double sharp. And there's a reason for naming these things like this. It all comes down to the way you transcribe things and what precedes it and what's following and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, long story short, on this B flat bass note, that A note is the major 7. What we're going to call a D flat note is a minor third, okay? And then the next note, which is E, is going to be a flat 5, okay? Or it can be a sharp 11. Yeah. So basically, it's some kind of altered chord, okay? And I would call this maybe a minor major 7 with a sharp 4. Again, you can call it whatever you want. You call it green or blue, but you're trying to analyze this in a logical way so that later you could actually use these chords maybe as substitutes for other things. So we'll just do one last one. Let's say this A major chord with a D in the bass. Okay? So now that sounds like a normal chord. What it is, that first note, the A, is the 5th of D. So if you go up a D major scale, D, D, E, F sharp, G, and A, that 5th note, that's your 5th. So you have A is the 5th of D. Then that next note, the C sharp, is the major 7 of D. That's the root, that's the major 7, pretty dissonant. And then that E is going to be the 9th. So you have D, E, right? So it's the second note in the scale, which is also a 9th. So basically, if you have your 5th, your major 7, and your 9th, this is a major 9 chord, okay? But another way of looking at it, again, if you look at the example up there, is an A over D, okay? So again, we're going to go in depth in another lesson on this, but what I wanted to do is get the concept out and get you to understand what's going on here, because that's all that's going on here. You basically have any triad shape and you're trying it over a different bass note. Right there, we use this pattern, right? But say you use this pattern, this D pattern, okay, that everybody knows. Well, if you play the D in the bass, that's just a D major chord. Say we play that same thing with a G in the bass. It's a familiar sound that you've heard. Or with an F sharp in the bass. Familiar sound. But let's say we use a C sharp in the bass. A little different. Or if we use, say, a B flat in the bass. Right? They're all different sounds. And they become all different chords. So if you're a little confused on that discussion, don't worry about it. We're going to get into it more in depth later. But just understand that you can analyze anything over a bass note and you can call it anything you want. But it's a cool way of looking at chords instead of just learning, you know, here's a major 9 chord or here's a this chord. You just take your triads that you already know and put different bass notes over them and kind of listen to what you get. All right, so let's move into the actual song itself and let's break that down and, yeah, let's move on to that.